you know, regarding value, it's a container term. We use it often, but the question is, what do we actually really mean? So I want to share 3 points of theory with you. As you said, that's the professor in me, like to lecture. So what I will do, I will go through the research on this topic quickly, and I will sketch you quickly what's going on. So the first thing to mention is the research by Al-Hayari et al. In 2017. What they did over there is they did research regarding how agile teams deal with the concept of value. It's a small research, but it's one of the few research themes where they're actually looking at and trying to measure it. What they did, they have, let's say, an N of 23, so they have 23 respondents in total 14 organizations. And what they did, they investigated to the topics being used and stuff. What they did, they also used the balanced scorecard, and they did a nice trick. So what they did, they took the business balance scorecard and said, well, you have customer value, you have the internal business value, you have financial value, and you have innovation and learning value. And of course, they even subdivided even more, but let's say on the top level, these are the 4 definitions of value used. And what they did then, they gave everybody a virtual $100, and they said, given how you work, you have to distribute these $100 about how important you think these dimensions of value are. How would you distribute them? I did it with all the people in there. And what came out of there is that, let's say, these people involved in this study, take me the blue pen, is that 64% of the money went to customer value, 23% went to internal business value, only 7% went to financial value, and the remaining 6% went to innovation and learning value. So what can we learn from this? We can learn from this when we deal with value that in most of the cases, it's not too much in the financial value, but it's rather in the perception of stakeholders, being colleagues or being customers. So when we deal with value, how often and how well are we actually looking at the people or the persons behind that, or looking at the finance? So that's the first part of research. The second one I won't write down, and that's regarding also the questions we asked over here. You know, how is it with the definition of value? Do you use it in your discussions? Do you formally measure it? And what's really interesting at the moment, we have now studied 7 organizations. We have 176 replies. In my handout, I will also include the link, so if you want to participate, please participate. What's really interesting is that at the moment, 50% of the organizations claim, of the people, the respondents, 50% of them claim they make value concrete in their day-to-day practice. And roughly 35% of them, they discuss it. Only 15% measures it. But what's really interesting at the moment is that 50% of the respondents say they actually make value concrete. But if you then look at how many organizations actually have a definition of value, it's only 5%. So this again supports the claim that in today's practice we talk about value all the time, but really we don't really seem to have a clue what we're talking about. And then we can have discussions, but the question is, what are we really talking about? Even remarkable, which is also funny, is that 60% of respondents don't know if there is an organizational definition of value. So still work to do. The third thing I would like to share with you is the definition of value. Because value, I mean, we should define it. So, let's go ahead. What is value? Well, value, it's typical. Value is it's situational. Situational meaning that, well, in some situations it's valuable, in the other it's not. Let me give you an example. I'm going to customers and advise a board of directors. I'm giving trainings, lectures like this, and most of the time people really appreciate my advice. But when I go home tonight and I see my wife, and I also have some pretty good advice for her, and I hand it over unwilling and unasked, well, it depends. Well, apparently then the situational effect of my advice is that it's not really being accepted. So, you know, the situation depends whether what you do is actually valuable or not. The second thing is it's subjective. It's subjective to what you think of value. What's valuable for one person is not valuable. It's like taste. It's like art. I mean, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. That's also for value. For some people, things are value. For the other, it's not. And also situational. For example, an umbrella is also the same. When it rains, an umbrella is more valuable than when it doesn't rain. The last one is also, it's time dependent. Time dependent. Which means something like the time dependency as value it always reminds me when I was a small child and we went on the summer holiday with the family in the car. My father was driving, my mother was sitting in the side, what is it? Not the driver's seat, the passenger seat. I was sitting with my brother on the back seat. And what happened most of the time, at the time there was no navigation system, so my father was driving, my mother was reading the map. And my mother always had great advice to my father. And it was, then we were driving, and said, now I see, we should have taken that exit. Which means, in fact, you know, the advice was valuable. It matched to the situation. Well, maybe it was a little bit subjective, not really, but the time dependency, you know, 2 minutes earlier would be really valuable. At that point of time, well, it helps for the atmosphere in the car, not really good. So value is A, situational, subjective, time-dependent, characteristic of products and services. And then comes the important part, assigned by stakeholders. And even there, we have to make a note because it's assigned by stakeholder and it may vary per stakeholder. That makes it so difficult to deal with. And there are tricks to deal with it. And then later on we'll also do an exercise here on the clothesline. But some of the things I have seen product owners going into meetings with poker chips. And depending on the stakeholders, he or she would give the respective stakeholder an amount of poker chips, because some stakeholders are more valuable than others. And they were able to put these stakes, put their chips on certain epics or stories. And because of that, they can make also alignments, they can put chips together. It's a way. Don't think that when you have stakeholders together and they start talking about value, that they will come to an agreement. Like we do in planning poker. In planning poker, say we do several rounds and then people will come closer. They will start to understand each other and they will come closer. For value, it's different. It's like for taste. If you don't like a certain dish and somebody else does, he or she can explain to you why they like it, and then you start to understand why they like it, but it won't make you like the dish. For value is the same thing. If somebody finds something valuable and they can explain it to you, start to understand why they find it valuable, but it doesn't change the value for you. So we have to do something else with that. And we'll deal with that later. I think those are the 3 things I wanted to discuss with you regarding the theory of value, so you can wake up now. And what we're going to do now, we're going to the clothes line. We're going to do something cool. For that I also need a Mentimeter, so please put on the next slide. And the slide after that, so then people can already put it in there. I have some dishes prepared for you. Some sushi dish, an apple, some instant soup, some bread with baked egg. In Dutch we call it an uitsmijter, so I called it a bouncer in English. No clue whether that's correct. And on the next slide, you're able to rank them, and you're able to rank to which extent it's more or less effort. So how much effort is it to really prepare that dish? Planning first, because I also think that's the least effort to prepare. You may have to climb a tree, you might have to wash the apple. I think the biggest effort of all the dishes over here, and it's also coming up in the slides over there, is that probably is going to be the Indonesian rice table. Lots of dishes, lots of preparation, lots of cooking. Let's see what happens with the others. Instant soup is probably close to the apple, yes. Where will you put the bouncer? Do we put the bouncer under the lasagne? And the lasagna and the steak or fries, I think, true. Yeah, it's, how do you call these? Washing clips or whatever? Never leave home without it, eh? And then probably finally, in your ranking, the sushi plate is 6th. This is typically something that you can do with effort. You can come to an agreement how much effort it is. And we can also use t-shirt sizes for that, which is pretty okay to deal with. So the apple is an XS, the instant soup is an S, then the strammer max or the bouncer is an M, the steak is an L, the lasagna is an XL, the sushi plate is an XXL, and the Indonesian rice table is an X3L. Right? But that's effort. So if we continue with the Mentimeter, we can also do the same thing for taste. So the question is, if we look to you at home, on the next slide, you're able to vote on which dish you really enjoy. Which dish of the 7 do you personally enjoy most extremely? Extra large lekker. So if we look, let's say, at the amount of lekker on the rank, it's for sure the Indonesian rice table is scoring the X3L. It's really, everybody says this is really my taste. Sushi is also pretty high, so let's put the sushi on, well, XL. Lasagna is an L. Steak with fries as well. And we still have the apple. Well, let's call that an M. And the other ones are not there. So the question is, why am I doing this? Well, the thing is, you can do a trick now. And the trick is pretty easy. You can say, well, we have XS, S, M, L, XL, XXL, and triple XL. And we can add numbers to them. So, for the sake of agile, let's use the Fibonacci sequence. 1, 2, 1 and 2 is 3, 3 and 2 is 5, 3 and 5 is 8, 5 and 8 is 13, 13 and 8 is 21. And now we can divide value by effort. So let's take, for example, the Indonesian rice table. It's 21 divided by 21, which means it only gets a score of 1. If you go to the sushi plate, it's 8 divided by 13. Well, it's roughly 0.6 or something. Then we go to the steak with fries, a 1 as well. The stram max, the bouncer, the uitsmijter is a 5 divided by 3. So that's a 1.7 or something. My head calculation are not the top. And then we come to the apple, which is the 3 divided by 1. So for ranking purposes, for deciding on your product backlog what to do, which the biggest value for the least amount of effort, you've just done it. You could say this is the shortest job first, but with dishes it's much more fun. And you can do this with user stories, epics as well. If you're a product owner, you can do this. It's easy. Involve your stakeholders, involve your teams for the effort, and you can do something like this. However, it was very clear that the Indonesian rice table is the favorite. And now it ends too low. I mean, I first get an apple, then I get a strammer max, the bouncer, the uitsmijter, and then finally... But what can we do? We can chop things up, right? We can slice. So suppose we're going to slice the Indonesian rice table. I've prepared a Mentimeter for that. So let's see. Apparently the rendang, part of the Indonesian rice table, is also a 3XL lekker. But how much effort is it? How much effort is the rendang? I'm not a cook, but I suppose it is somewhere close to a lasagna. Suppose it's that, so it means we're going to divide 21 by 8, again, we're close to 3. So we come to a kind of a 2.8. So that means you've just sliced your favorite to go on top. First, you have to eat an apple. And it's okay to eat an apple. It's healthy. It's the birthday of the apple company today. So eating an apple is pretty okay. But now we have the rendang second. And that's the trick. That's the trick on how to deal with value. And that's the essence of the clothesline. So now I only have 3 things left for you. The 3 key takeaways regarding dealing with value. So, the key takeaways on value. The number one item regarding value with Agile is accept. Please accept its subjective nature. Please accept that value is in the eye of the beholder. The research shows it, the practice shows it, probably also the taste, the meals clothesline showed it. Value shifts, it's subjective, it's situational, it's time dependent. Don't try to grab it in the single financial metric, because if you're doing that, you're possibly measuring the wrong thing. You're going to not measure the customer value and internal value anyway, and you're focusing too narrow. So accept it's subjective and deal with that. Use it together, use it in your discussions. Yes, try to make it concrete, but accept it's subjective and there's no need to make it such concrete. Cost is subjective too. Some people think it isn't, but it is. I mean, this is with effort. I mean, making an instant soup for some people takes an hour. Or let me cook a dish, an Indonesian rice plate, it will never end. So effort is also variable. So accept its subjective nature. But, however, if you accept that after, then please define and measure it. Because the fact that it's subjective and it changes doesn't mean you shouldn't define it, you should measure it. Don't treat it as physics, don't treat it as an absolute metric that you can always use to express it, but still you have data. And data is always stronger than opinions. So yes, accept its subjective nature, but then define and measure it. Because the purpose of value measurement, of value definition, is not to exactly know, it's about validation. We're in an agile fashion. We're doing DevOps. We are discovering things. We have great ideas, but they're probably going to change. And some of our ideas are great and some are not. So the purpose of measurement is not to know the accurate number, it's the validation. It's about time to learn, to discover which ideas are great and which ones are not. For that you do need to measure value, despite its subjective character. And the third tip, the third takeaway, is that value should be maybe the metric, but value should be part of the definition of ready. And I know formally in the Scrum Guide there is no definition of ready. It says user stories are deemed to be ready for sprint, but sometimes people make a definition of ready. And sometimes it makes sense to say, well, when is stuff really ready for sprint? Because you want it to be finished in the sprint. Well, the definition of ready includes value. And it's not just because you want to measure it, but when you're a software developer and you have to implement something, you have to make something, or when you're an ops engineer and you have to create a test script or whatever, if you don't understand the value of the thing you're delivering, how do you know how to build it? I mean, I'm a programmer myself. Any problem you can solve in 30, 40 times. There are 30, 40 ways. But the best solution is not regarding the technicalities. The best solution is regarding the value delivering. Go back to the first principle of the Agile Manifesto. Our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery of valuable software. That's what we're doing it for. So if you don't, as a software engineer, and you're in a team, and you don't understand the value of the stuff you're building, don't start building. Find the value out first, because that is going to help you. This is what I wanted to address with you today. So we did a little bit of some finding out, how value is defined in your organization and how the definition of value is established. Pretty close to the research we're carrying out at the moment. We did a value quiz, and Eric has won. Eric, don't know your last name, but still, today you can come home. You say, well, you're already home. Maybe you're in the garden. I'm not sure, but you are the value king of the DevOn Summit of this year. We also did the value close line, the way the shortest job first. Can be easily be done. Remember t-shirt sizes translating to the Fibonacci sequence. Then you can divide them. You can ROE sequences. Don't forget to slice. And also, I have the 3 takeaways for you. That means I'm almost done. But not really. Many people have seen me before. I come from Delft. And in Delft, when we give people a gift, it's most of the time it's a Delft blue tile. It's Delft blue with the nice letters, and it gives you how do you call this? A spreuk, a sentence, a wish. And I've prepared one for you for today regarding this topic. It's not mine. I just stole it from a very important scientist. It's a quote by Albert Einstein. Where do I have it? Here I have it. When you talk about value, please strive not to be a success, but rather strive to be of value. I thank you very much. Please, at home, stand up and applause for yourself. Thank you very much.